like to thank everybody for joining in today. This is going to be the control security webinar that we're putting on. We're going to give everybody just a couple more seconds to maybe a minute or so to kind of join in, and then we'll start going through the slides. Again, thank you everybody coming in. I was looking at the list of people who signed up from the webinar, and we got people all over the world. So thanks for some of you for coming in late in your evening, and others during your lunch hour and stuff. Much appreciated. We've got some individuals on the question box area, so if you have any questions as we're kind of going through the webinar, please feel free to kind of type those in there. Mike, Dee, Sean, and Scott, thank you very much. They will be trying to answer all those while we're in here during the webinar, and if they don't get to all of them before we're done, we'll get them all documented and get the responses out to everybody as soon as we can. So, again, this is the ConnectWise Control Security webinar. I think we're about a minute or so in now, so I'm at least going to start flipping over and get ready to get started. Cyber threat protection for remote support users. So the big thing that we're going to talk about today is just cyber threats, security. What do we look for any remote control product that you might be using? Whether it's Control, we hope, but any other one that you might be using in an industry or an open source tool. Some of the things that you want to look for, make sure that those tools have, and if they don't, push them a little bit to make sure they get those for you. My name is Jeff Bishop. I'm the Vice President of ConnectWise Control. The quick background is that I've been with ConnectWise Control, ScreenConnect, originally, formerly ScreenConnect, for, about 9 years now. We first kind of got it up and going. Played a lot of different roles from sales, product management, and now the Vice President. Okay, so what we're going to be looking at today from an agenda perspective is just, what are the key security features that you should have inside of a product that provides remote control or remote access solutions to machines. Then we'll touch on some best practices, things to look for, things that probably are on the solution that you're using in our solution that you may not be aware of. And then we'll kind of do a little bit of a deep dive into some of this, the implementation of this inside of ConnectWise Control. Make sure you know where that feature is, how to turn it on, turn it off, how to configure it and set it up. I do want to make sure and let everybody know, hopefully you're using a lot of these techniques and tools already today, and you know everything about them. But I'm guessing that I'm going to at least surprise a few of you with some new things that you haven't seen before. But I don't want you to worry about trying to take notes or screen capture or anything like that. The team is going to put together an asset after we get done with the presentation and we see what all questions we get. They're going to put together an asset and make sure that everybody who signed up for this webinar gets that document that goes through a lot of the steps, screenshots of how all this works. So links to some blog posts, some forum posts that I really like about security, and also chart KB articles and videos that explain some of the feature sets. So, all right, that said, let's kind of jump in and look at a few things. At a high level, this is what I want to talk about first, is high level, what should you see from a remote control solution? What are some of the things that they should be talking about and things that they should be able to provide you? Probably the first two that I want to jump into is vulnerability scans and penetration testing. Now, who does these kind of things? I mean, there's a lot of companies out there that provide software and these services. Rapid7 is one that comes to mind that I've worked with in the past. The key about this is that vulnerability scans, there's a lot of software out there, and they should be able, any vendor should be able to provide you some of the reports from those scans. Was there any high-level or critical issues that need to be addressed? And then from a penetration testing, that's usually going to be done by a third-party product, a third-party company who will be able to provide a report to the remote control software vendor that they can then make available to you. Often these things are not going to be posted out there online on their website, so it will be something you'll have to ask for. Often the penetration testing is a bit of an extensive thing, so you may get a response of like, hey, we're almost done, or we're going to get that available soon. I know that's where we're currently at in one of ours, is that our most recent penetration testing is done. We went through no critical or big issues or anything, some suggestions on some minor things, but we then have to go and talk to them and address that and then get their official report back so that we can hand that out to all of our customers who are interested in that. So it's something to ask for and look for from any of the vendors that you might be working with. Kind of the next two items, security alerts, emails, notifications. If somebody's in there using your remote control software, you know. If somebody hops on at 2 o'clock in the morning, they're connecting to a machine, as an admin of that system, you probably want to know about that. Some sort of a notification through your mobile, through the web app, an email, something. Different tools are going to handle this different ways, but they should be able to provide you some way of visibility into what's happening inside of that remote control system. At the end of the day, this is the security. This is a gateway into lots of servers and devices, mobile devices. So you want to make sure that this is locked down as secure as possible. And if somebody does get in, make sure that you have awareness of that. And then data encryption. This is something that should be pretty much all over any security guide or documentation on how the solution works. What kind of encryption is happening between the remote client and your technician? For us, we're using a Microsoft AES-256 algorithm. So Microsoft does all that FIPS accreditation for that algorithm for us, and that's what we use. Others are going to use something different. So make sure you reach out and evaluate that and make sure that that encryption module that they're using has gone through some sort of FIPS certification. And then code reviews. This is going to be a little bit more of a, hey, are you guys doing a good job with your coding practices? If you ask them about, say, like the Open Web App Security Project, if they seem completely surprised by that, they don't know what it is, it's something that maybe just a little bit of maybe I need to ask them a few more security questions to make sure that this is the right product for me. That OS stuff, it's great. They give a lot of suggestions on how to do best coding practices for security, auditing, and so on and so forth. So it's just one of those kind of checks that I like to recommend for any product that you're using. A lot of different web apps that we consume here at ConnectWise, when we're going out and evaluating them, we'll ask to kind of see how they answer those questions. And then just built-in security features. Every company is different. From our MSPs to our internal IT to our break-fix shops to the software companies that are using this to go out there and help the customers. Everybody's going to have different needs. Some of those things that you want to look for, is compliance. If you got to get into some PCI or HIPAA or anything, give you those options. Do they have different sort of deployment methods? Is it all just in the cloud? Do they have on-prem? Some of these things are questions that you might want to ask yourself to see if it's a good fit for you as a company. Permissions, role-based security, the different password options, authentication sources, LDAP, SAML, internal forms authentication. What is it that they have, and does that meet your own security needs and guidelines? Do they have articles on security and recommended best practices? Give you kind of a thought process. Are they taking security seriously, and are they giving you all the right features and suggestions that you need, regardless of where you are in your deployment? You might be just starting with them, or maybe you're a year or two in. Are you seeing all the things that you need as you've learned more about how to use that product? All right, and then so we were just talking about best practices. So there's 3 or 4 areas that we just wanted to make sure and address with everybody before we kind of did a dive into the ConnectWise control solution. Passwords. This is just kind of a key thing here. Use complex passwords. Don't reuse credentials. Force password changes. These are things that just about any remote control solution is going to be able to do for you. One of the suggestions I always have that I wanted to try to get across here is you want complex passwords. You want them to use the exclamation marks and things to make sure that it's not just a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 password or an ABCD. but they got to be able to remember it. So some of the things that I've always talked about is providing some sort of a method, teaching a technique for remembering these passwords. There's a lot of different blog articles out there that talk about this. I'll try to make sure that we find a couple that we can include with that asset. But if they're just taking that password, that really complex password, and putting it on a Post-it note there, laying beside their keyboard or on the back side, or if they're using the same password that they use for 50,000 other things, maybe they're going out and they're signing up for some forum that's completely unsecure, that's going to get hacked, and now they've got their email address and their password. Doesn't matter how secure it was or how complex it was, it's been hijacked, and now that password that they're using for some cheap forum or something else that they signed up for is now the one that they're using for the remote control. You're in a lot of trouble. So make sure that they don't reuse these in everywhere, that they have the secure passwords they use for certain things, and that they have other password techniques or that they use across different levels of tiers of security needs. And any of these tools should be able to try to force a password change and provide the basic level of stuff that you would need. If you were setting up your security authentication inside of a company, you're usually having some sort of like reset the password every couple months, a certain length requirement. Maybe you're setting up an expression. Don't let them use the same password for 3 or 4 times in a row. These are things that most of the better remote control solutions are going to be able to provide for you. All right, moving along. Oh, sorry, lockout accounts. Yeah, I almost forgot about that point. If they do try to come in too many times or attempt a password failure 4 or 5 times in a row, do you have a way of kind of locking them out and preventing that brute force attack? Okay, multi-factor authentication. We called it multi-factor instead of two-factor because the 3-factor technique is starting to become a lot more popular. You've seen it out there. So something a password, right? And we just talked about password security. Then you kind of get into something you have. Access to email, maybe a text message, something to tie in, maybe your mobile device. Great, good techniques. There you go. But the 3-factor, the third one, something you are, is a technique that's starting to get a lot of adoption. You're seeing it with the most recent iOS updates, where you can get into the facial rec. We've seen fingerprint for a while. I mean, it's gotten a lot better. If you may remember some of the first Toshiba laptops, however many years ago, or try to scan your fingerprint, and 5 minutes later you're still trying to log in. But those techniques have gotten a lot better, and there's more. The facial rec and fingerprints and that kind of bio stuff kind of is very popular and trendy. But even something that get a little bit more basic, like who you are. For me, one of those things is like IP addresses. That's your office, that's you, that's who you are with that static IP. And that's one that we have consumed here as we look at trying out some of these other techniques like the facial or the fingerprint. And then role-based permissions. So when you start, we talked about compliance a little earlier. Most of the compliance articles and documents that come out from PCI and HIPAA, they provide all kinds of rules and how remote control should be used. One of the areas they really key in on is management of devices and access to devices, and making sure that this person can get access to these group of machines, but maybe not this other group, and making sure that kind of stuff is locked down and very secure. So looking for ways that you can tie access levels and permission levels to a user's role. And then ways that you can group machines so that each of those roles can get to those machines. Be careful when you start seeing like deny and allow permissions together. There are a lot of tools out there that do that, but it's very easy when you're denying and allowing to accidentally do something you didn't mean to do. So keep an eye out of that. We typically work off an allow-only kind of permission. You have nothing to start with, and you have to allow them in. It's kind of a nice architecture building block. It can take a little bit longer to build some of these out, but less opportunity for mistakes that we want to make sure from a security perspective that you don't have. And then how do you work with remote workers? These individuals who need to be able to hop onto these machines when they're at home, or there's a storm, there was a hurricane recently that affected our office down in Tampa, and we had hundreds of workers out of the office trying to hop into their computers, and how do you allow that to happen? How do you support maintaining the infrastructure of the company or your customers' companies when you have people working remotely and in a secure fashion? Then we'll kind of get into logging and auditing, which is another a big compliance thing. Any compliance article, any document you'll read, they'll always hop down to logging and auditing. Make sure that you can go back in to see what happened and pull reports to see how the tool is being used. So some of the key ones that we focus on here that we like to talk about a lot is who connected to that device. When did they connect to it? What did they do while they were connected? You may not always be able to see every single thing that somebody did, but making sure that you can get as much visibility in there as you can is really important, and where they connect from. So logging and auditing in general is just one of those safety nets. You want to be able to get in there and see what happened whenever there is a problem, and hopefully you've got reports and things built up so that you can kind of keep a constant eye on how the stuff is working. And then one that's I'm pretty passionate about here is guest security. There's not a day goes by that I don't read some article, through my Google News feeds about some scammer ripping off somebody, a grandmother or a grandson, where they've gone in and done something malicious. So we really want to try to do what we can to make sure that the end user is being protected as much as possible. So putting in tools like guest consent, make sure that they can say, I want to allow you in to remote control this machine, or be able to kick somebody out that shouldn't be there, doing something malicious, be able to exit and end, and then also report suspicious behaviors. If somebody's really taking this serious, they're going to have some method. It may just be an email, but they've got some sort of method or process or a web form where you can go in, or end users can go in and say, hey, somebody hopped on my machine. I don't know if it's a legit thing, and they can report that, and that company then takes action to make sure that they're going in to see how people are using their product. For us, so this is kind of fun. I want to hop in some of the new stuff, things that we're doing here before we kind of dive into the product a little bit. One that it's been really fun for us is the SAML and single sign-on. So we're playing around a lot with different OAuth, SAML methodologies to how can people come into our application through different authentication sources. So some of that, you'll start seeing that roll out in the latest releases. And it's just going to continue to build and compound as we get a lot of feedback from you, our users, as to what you want to see and how you want us to set that up. Scam prevention is another one. We've put together some forms. We've got some machine learning that we're putting in place to try to make sure that anybody using our product is using it correctly and they're not doing anything they shouldn't. So it's tough. A lot of these hackers and scammers that are out there all over the world are using remote control software to kind of hop in computers. So it's kind of our responsibility as an industry to try to do the best we can to try to prevent that. So the guys here are doing an amazing job of trying to start to identify that and put some tools in place to prevent it. What's coming? We're spending a lot of time on thought leadership. This webinar is kind of a starting point for us. Please, as you go in and you start filling out this question box or surveys at the end, let us know what you think. We've kept this initial webinar pretty high level, talking a little bit about all different kinds of areas of security. But if there's something specifically you would like to see us target or focus on, if we can do it, we'll do it ourselves. If we can't, we'll go look and find some industry experts to come in here to talk to you on one of our next webinars about that subject. ConnectWise has over 200 solution providers, partners that provide everything from security, AV to disaster recovery to break fix, disaster recovery to backups, servicing. So we've got a lot of experts that we partner or work with that are within our company. So if our team here on ConnectWise Control can't do it, we can certainly try to find somebody to help. So let us know what you think, where we need to do our next deep dive. If this high level was good, or if you want to see more about where we're going in the future, we can do that as well. But thought leadership is one that we're going to spend a lot of time on. You're going to see more papers, articles, blog posts from us on different things there. Security alerts. So we have the ability to set up alerts today around people connecting into sessions, joining machines, all that kind of great stuff is there. You can do HTTP pushes. I'll show you a little bit about that, or emails. But we're also looking at trying to provide some predictive analytics, machine learning for you to help you out as well. So if you got somebody, you never have anybody connect in at 3 o'clock in the morning, and now somebody did, sending you some sort of an alert and a message saying, hey, did you know this happened? This just happened. You want to know about this. We think you want to know about this. So it's something you'll be able to sign up for and use. It's being worked on now, so hopefully we'll have something for people to start to play with in our pen team, our beta testers, alpha tester groups here in the next month, weeks to a month or so. Two-factor enhancements. We talked a lot, a minute ago about the multi-factor stuff, 2FA, 3FA, things that are so we're starting that, looking into the mobile area first, then kind of looking and then going from there out to the computers and desktops, the different OSs to see what we can do. So expect to see some enhancements in that area pretty soon. And then extensions. I just came back from a user group in Atlanta, sitting down with, I think it's like almost 400 partners of all the product line, of all the suite. Some who weren't even using it yet, who just wanted to come and sit in and listen. And one of the big things I kept hearing was, I don't know which one of my machines or my customers' machines, they connected in with any remote support vendor. And do they have the RDP stuff set up? These are companies that may not have all the remote monitoring management tools in place today. And so as I started thinking about that, like, man, we had this extension that we started looking into a while back, and we're going to try to take it forward, which would allow you to look at any of the machines that are being managed by control and look to see, do they have our agent installed, as well as any of the other agents, other vendors in the market. Maybe look at the RDP ports to see if they're open. We're just going to try to provide you some insight into the security of those devices that you are connecting to and managing, to try to provide you a little bit of insight. A lot of the people on this phone call probably, or this webinar, probably have some of these tools that you're already using today, but a lot of you won't. And we're just hoping that we can provide, for those who don't, an additional piece of functionality to help keep your customers secure. And for those that you do, maybe this is kind of a secondary check or something that you can turn on to help really validate and make sure that there's nothing going on in your computers or your clients' machines. All right. Well, I don't want to get to questions just yet. What we're going to do now is kind of move over and kind of dig into the application. Move over here. So you should be able to see ConnectWise Control. This is our web application. I'm currently on the access page. This is where we would build access agents, and this is where they kind of show back up in our system. So, the first thing I want to kind of dig into is we talked for a second about role-based permissions and how that would work. You can see I've got 5 or 6 machines here that are called back in, and their organization was set to test. So if I click on this, you can see. So when they built this installer file, if you go look at the build installer, they could decide to use the machine name or a specific value like Jeff's computer or Jeff's laptop. We also have a lot of custom properties. The one that we turn on by default is organization. There's several custom properties. Most are turned off by default. You can go into the admin appearance area and enable these so that you can create custom properties for, say, location, machine type, maybe servers versus laptops versus mobile device, or digital signs, depending on what kind of industry you're playing in or what kind of technology teams you have within your organization. And when these things all call back in, they're going to call in with those organization sets. So if I had put, say, test in here and deployed this out to machines for all those who are sitting on this webinar, you would have called back in and we'd have seen organization test. Okay, great. It called back in that way. Now, how do I kind of group these together so that I can set up a role-based permission? So I can say this role or this user can get to these machines only. It's really quite simple. We just go down here to the create session groups. We'd give it a name. I'm going to name it test for consistency here, because I can type that with one hand. And then I'll just create a session filter. These session filters can seem a little complex, but the power of them is amazing. This is not your typical drag and drop folder like we see in Windows Explorer. While that could be pretty easy, the ability here is more like Outlook's filtering, where we can set up this filter for test, and it'll put all the test machines in there. But I could also have a filter, say, for all my Windows 10 machines, or all machines that are currently connected, or all machines that currently have a host and a guest in a session. There's tons of different filters you can set up based off of attributes and participants. But for this sake, I just want to group these by organization. So I'm just going to click on that. I'll change me to test, hit create, and voila. Over here on the left, we now see that test folder, test filter, with those test machines in there. Really simple. In a minute, as we get into actually going into the roles and the users, I'll show you how we could then go in and define a role that only has access to that test filter and none of the other machines. But before we kind of move over there, I want to touch on a few other features here that are from a security perspective. Now, if I'm sitting on this Windows 10 machine, I can go over here to More. I can get a host pass. This host pass is a way of letting a vendor or a third party or an individual into that machine for a certain amount of time only. You can choose the type of permissions they'd have, how long they can get in, and then you send them that link, and now they're in. If you ever given a vendor or somebody access to a folder or machine for a few minutes, you have them come in and help you out with something. I know a lot of our MSPs and outsourced IT, you often manage a lot of you're kind of a one-stop shop. You not only handle their devices, management, and their servers, you also handle a lot of the vendor relationships. So when you have to do that, how do you get them in without going and setting up a permission and then remembering to go delete that permission later that day before you head home? This is a way to kind of help do that. We also have some other tools in place that I won't dig into today on the mobile workforce. This could be a way of doing mobile workforce, depending on how big you are, how much scale you have. But we have other tools that allow you to kind of deploy clients to their other machines that will allow them to kind of come in pretty easily. We'll make sure and provide some information on that in the asset that we send out after the webinar. But that host pass is a really great one, especially if you're working with third-party vendors. The other thing I want to talk about is our timeline. I mentioned this at another event I was at a few months back, and everybody kind of looked at me like they didn't know what I was talking about. So I wanted to point it out. This is a timeline of every connection into this device. So you can kind of see, when the guest connected and what they did and everything else. Let's take a look here. This is Dee, who's on there helping answer questions today. You can see that she connected in. We can see that it looks like she sent a message. I'm going to transfer a file to you now. She then did a dragged file. Looks like it was ConnectWise-control.pdf. And then she was off the session. So that session we'll actually be able to go and look at later. You'll be able to see those activities occurring. But this is the kind of visibility that's great. A lot of tools are going to have this in different formatting. I'm not aware of many that have a timeline like this, but they may have this through some sort of a database pull or extraction. All right. I think that's about it for here. Now, we'll dive in real quick over to the admin area and kind of dig in a little bit into some of these paths and more permission stuff. So we're in our admin area of the product. So we'll go over here to security. And then we're going to jump on here to the user source. I'm currently set up using internal forms authentication. That means I've got roles defined down here, and I create a user table. You can also see that we have Windows Active Directory and LDAP enabled in this instance to be used. We can use multiple LDAPs if necessary. If we want to dig into that more in a future webinar, we certainly can. But from an internal perspective, you can see that Jeff, Mike, Scott all have access in here. We're all set up as administrators currently. I think I might delete Mike or change his to a different permission somewhere down the line. But you can also see that D has her two-factor set up. So it's set up to be email, and it's going to go to her email address. So when she tries to log in, D is going to receive an email with a code that she's going to then have to she's going to be prompted with before she's allowed to authenticate into the control application. So a really nice feature. We support a lot of different one-time passwords, additional two-factor. You can see a few of them kind of laid out here: email or text, depending on how that's structured. Google Authenticator. We don't see it listed here, but we do also have the Microsoft Authenticator, YubiKey, the LinOTP, and then Duo. So all of those are options that you have for two-factor setup. We're always looking at more. The Duo, I think, was the most recent that we did, but we're always looking to add in more authentication method here over time, but these are ones that are available today. Really easy kind of setup. You can just kind of see, as if I was editing Dee's role here, I could change your name, I could change your password for her because I'm an admin. I'll show you about the forced password here in a second, but you can see it was pretty simple to set up a two-factor. You just go and enable it in another area of the product, and you just set it up right here. I could also change her role from administrator to host, or give her both access. Why both? As I said earlier, we work on you have nothing unless it's applied. It's not a deny. It's an access level permission setup. So one of our recommendations from a best practice perspective is don't try to create this monolithic role that has all the exact specific things you want. Create layered roles as you build up. Create a role that has access to the host page. Maybe then create one that has access to certain desktop computer filters. And then maybe another role that has access to maybe the CEO's computers. As you stack those, you keep them very simple. It's clean to go in and look, to add, to modify, and then you can build on top of those really easily as I'm adding new users in. So from me to you, my best practice is don't try to create a monolithic role. Much more of a chance for a mistake there that you forgot to add some filter that you want them to have access to, or you accidentally clicked one you didn't. So by stacking, you got a lot better chance of a more scalable, maintainable role-based permission structure. All right. Now, real quick, I want to talk about the create user. You saw that in that where D was all set up. I could go in here and create another one, for Steve. Set his password for him, verify his password, and then force password change at next login. If I click this, I send this out to Steve. Great, he's good to go. But it's going to say, what's your old password, what's your new one? And it's going to take them through that process. And so if you want to set those up, but you want to make sure they set it to something that they can remember, because you've taught them how to maintain their own password management, then or you're using a password management tool, here you go. This is a great way to do that. And then also under here in the options area that I think a lot of people don't know about, or it gets hidden. We probably need to do a little better job and make sure this is very intuitive for everybody. But under configure, we have lots of different ways to set up your password management structure here. So everything from how, most of these are like the resource string ITs, but it's very readable, maxed invalid password attempts. How many password attempts before we invalidate somebody? Minimum required non-alphanumeric characters. Say that, Eric. Password length. Expressions. We can do expression building. If you've never set up a password expression, kind of a cool thing. Go ahead and define what it is that they need to have as part of the password structure for it to be a legit password. But you don't have to do it for them. You just define the expression, and that forces the end user to do it correctly. You can set an expiration to make them come back in and put in a new password. And you can also set the history link to make sure that they're not using the same password over and over again through this. So you can say they have to go at least 2 or 3 deep before they can reuse one. So that kind of gets into the user setup kind of thing. Let's just kind of go down here and kind of look at a role real quick for sake of understanding how would we define a role to only have access to that test folder. I'm editing this role real quick just to kind of see it, but you can see that there's global permissions that we can set up for that role. And then I could go down here and give them access to that test folder. And then I can also set tons of different permissions, such as can they view that session group? Okay. Can they join sessions in that? Can they end sessions? Can they run commands, add notes, transfer files? These are all the different types of permissions that we can establish and give them access to or not, depending on how you want to set this all up. So it's a pretty easy process once you kind of dig into it. It does seem a little complex to start, I understand, but after you've done one of these and kind of read through it, it's a very clean and easy process. And tons of granularity and permissions that you can establish with that. All right, so moving on from, say, the users and role stuff, let's kind of go in and look at auditing, the logging aspect of it, right? So we have our audit page here. Just going to do a quick query. Boom, there it is. So we can scan and go through and look at all the different connections and disconnections and who hopped on and did what. One of the things that we provide is what we call extended auditing or video auditing. This allows us to capture a video of every single remote connection. You saw that timeline earlier where D had hopped in and connected the machine, sent a message, and transferred the file. Well, we can download this file here. It's going to come down into my browser. We can then open it up, and we would then be able to kind of see D is connecting into this machine. You can see that as a user, they could have gone in here and kicked this out, but they are notified of that. They could go right-click and exit out of this session. I think this was a support session. This might have been an access session, but you can see where she sent the message and transferred the file in over here on the side. So video auditing is kind of a neat thing. If you ever need to go back in and see, did we actually do this? A customer calls you and says, you did this to my computer. This is a great way to go in and say, no, we didn't. See, look, this is exactly what we did when we hopped on that computer earlier. So video auditing, being able to download those videos is kind of a neat thing. Folks I on the team I was kind of pretty excited about was this download batch audit recorder download. We probably need to figure out a shorter name for it, but the cool thing about this is, let me open it up. This is just an extension we've kind of put together real quick. It allows you to set the from and the to time, set up your authentication, and you can then set a path where you want all of those auditing files to go, those video auditing files. So you want to store those off somewhere secure on a server and keep track of them. This is how you can go do that. And it's going to download those and put them into the proper format so they're easily watchable wherever you store them. So cool feature. It's kind of a new extension that's out there. I think it's been loaded up on the marketplace already. So just something to keep an eye on. Kind of moving out of the auditing, or the logging here, just reporting in general. There's several different reporting extensions available. This is one of the new ones that's been put into the marketplace. I thought I'd just show it. There's others that just allow you to grab a CSV and put it into whatever BI tool that you might use for looking at data. A lot of people use the third-party tools, BrightGauge, Power BI, whatever it is. So this one allows a little bit of a dashboard view. Go in and look at some things, look at connections. It does have a recent active technicians, kind of a roll call area, and then you can go in here and define reports. Access machine, date range. Set up different filters you want, and then you can download and generate that report. We have a full reporting API available, so you can come in here and have other tools call in and get all the information you want. We have extensions, as I said, that just pulls down that raw data for you to take and then go manipulate however you want. And then we have some of these other like newer extensions like this one that are being built, some by us, some by others, that are available out there in the extension marketplace. I think a couple that I've seen aren't quite live yet, but should see them pretty soon. All right, so that gets us through some of the auditing, the logging, the reporting. We talked about that batch downloader, which is kind of a neat thing. When we were talking about the multi-factor authentication, one of the things I mentioned was kind of IP blocking. I kind of found out that a lot of people didn't realize that it existed. So two things there. One, there is a new extension that is going live. If it's not already there, called the configuration extension, which gives you access to web configurations as well as the application configurations and a little bit of a nicer UI that we've been working on. Pretty neat. Just to kind of provide that out there for you. But one that's pre-existing that I'm a little more familiar with today, like I'm going to pull it up here, is the edit web config. So yes, editing a web config can restart your services. So if you've got a huge amount of instances, you might want to be careful when you do that. But if I go over here to this per page settings, you can see restrict to IPs and block IPs. So I can restrict or I can block. And that's really important. If you want to try to make sure that you are preventing people from getting in to your application, you can go in and use different tools to say, I want to block all IPs from this area of the world. I want to make sure that only these IPs are good. These are the kind of things that you can do here. There's a nice article on it that will include that asset that we hand out to everybody a little bit later. So, well, that's kind of my last thing here. I've kind of dove through the two-factor, the multi-factor, the configurations, auditing, and logging. Talked a little bit about compliance. I do want to thank everybody for your time today. Let me pull back up that PowerPoint just so you know who to reach out to if you have any questions. So the team will be on Adobe for a little bit longer, answering any questions you might have about anything that we talked about. If you've got some things that you want to see us do for security in the future or I didn't cover today, please ask them. Feature enhancements, please pour those on in there. If you're having any problems implementing any of these things, let them know. Give them your email address, and they'll work with our support team to reach out and kind of walk through that with you. Our sales team, sales@screenconnect.com, is always more than happy to help. Send them an email. They can help coordinate you into the right group as well. So take advantage of all the guys and ladies out there answering those questions in Adobe in the meeting right now. While they're there, you get those answers quickly. Again, thank you so much for your time today going through this. Hopefully we can do a lot more of these in the futures and maybe deep dive into a little bit further and really kind of get a little techy on them. So, all right. And at that, I'm done. Thank you very much, and everybody have a great day.